I can explain.
Thank you for releasing me.
All right, we are here. It's time. It's happening. This is something I've been working on for a very long time, and now I can't wait to actually show you it. I don't care if it's late, we're doing it. So, for some context, going all the way back to 2017, I really didn't get to play any games at all that year. I mostly have college to blame for that, but it was frustrating enough that when 2018 rolled around, I decided that I was not going to let this slide. I was going to play more video games. Video games are such a huge part of my life, and I really do enjoy them, and so I didn't want another year to go by where I didn't get to play anything. But then another idea came to mind. I was like, hey, I've not really done any content on my channel regarding video games. It's mostly been movies and TV shows. I wasn't even sure where to start introducing video game content, and so the idea I had was I was going to track every video game I played in 2018, and then once the year's up, I'm gonna put a big video together talking about everything I played so that you all can get this idea of what kind of gamer I am, what kinds of games I enjoy, what my tastes are, and that kind of thing. There were so many games that I've been wanting to play for years, franchises that I've never touched, and I wanted to give them a try. There were games that I played so many years ago that I completely forget how they are, and so I wanted to just kind of try them again and refresh my opinion. And then of course there were new games coming out that I had my eye on. I thought this would be a really fun idea and a way to share my gaming with you guys, but holy cow everyone, I really didn't know how big of an undertaking this was going to be. I recognize that this 2018 video is coming out of July 2019, and I apologize so much, and thank you all for being so patient for it. This video turned out to be massive, so it's probably going to be the kind of thing you play in the background while you're getting work done, which that could be awesome. If I'm able to accompany you while you draw, or you work, or you clean your room, that's cool. That's cool. Hope you enjoy. I don't really know how else to start this video. That's probably enough pre-ramble, so let's begin. Let's just get started. Since I made the pledge in March, these first 2 months were rather light on the game playing. In January, I played a bit of Earthbound, but I've played that game a dozen times, so that's hardly an achievement. Then I played some old Yu-Gi-Oh games from my childhood. I don't know, I was going through a phase. I was watching the anime and building character decks like a madman, so that took over my life for a while. But after that was the only real game I played in January, Resident Evil 4. Despite my love for survival horror games, I don't have much experience in Resident Evil. A year prior, I watched my friend play the entirety of RE7, and that same friend now was introducing me to 4. I know I've played the opening areas of 4 back in high school, but this was a full, complete playthrough. And man, playing this game was like sitting back and watching the best kind of cheesy monster flick. It was endlessly entertaining watching the marvelous misadventures of Leon S. Kennedy. He's such a little cheeseball, and I love it.
Thanks. That should keep me company, cause boredom kills me.
I don't know how I went this long without playing it, but I'm happy that I can now add this to my survival horror belt. February was even more shameful. A whopping 2 games, the least I played for the entire year. I started a playthrough of Pokemon Ultra Sun for the first time, but I ended up putting the game down. I don't know, it constantly made me wish I was playing regular Sun and Moon over it. I've never really felt that way playing Pokemon before, having a new version just make me wish I was playing the old one. It seemed like the plot that I was really enjoying before was turning into, everybody stop what you're doing, Necrozma's here, we gotta put aside our differences and put a stop to them. I don't know, While I may not have been invested this time, I know I'll give this game another chance someday. It is Pokemon after all. The other game I played was Nier Automata. Automata? Oh no. And wow, what a trip this was. I don't own a PS4, so I rely on my aforementioned friend to show me all the goodies the system has to offer. And oh my gosh, Nier. I played through the entire first chapter with 2B, just the first chapter. I wanted to save the rest for the day when I could own the game myself. But man, what a bizarre, thought-provoking, fast-paced, existential, beautiful, messed up game. I'd love to talk about the most striking and memorable moments, but I'd hate to spoil anything from this game, so let's move on to March. March. This was the month I decided enough messing around. I'm gonna commit to gaming in 2018. Going back to Pokemon, I decided to cheer myself up by playing one of my favorites, Pokemon White. I also decided to try a Nuzlocke-like challenge. I've done one or two in my day, and I had an idea. I sent a text to a random friend I hadn't spoken to in ages, shouted, "Quick, what's your favorite type?" And thus began my Pokemon White Grasslock. I had only done one type lock before this, and man, oh man, was this so much more fun than friggin' Steel. Unfortunately, the run ended in failure, but come on. You try going up against a Reshiram with a team of grass types. I'm proud of myself for even getting that far. Shoutouts to Peach and Pepper for being rock stars. After that, I played Little Nightmares. The horror genre has become something of an oversaturated mess, but every so often a diamond appears in the rough, and this was one of them. I'm a sucker for games that get the theorist side of my brain going. It was a thrill trying to figure out what was going on, who's that, where am I? While also having to use my brain noodle to get past all the bloated monster guys. I died a lot. This game humbled me. I have much to learn in the art of precision platforming. But I did finish it, and I'd love to play this game again sometime. After that, I played a couple shorter games. Kirby Clash Deluxe on 3DS entertained me for a bit, and after that I played some Tulip. Still on a Kirby hype for the soon-to-release Star Allies, I played Kirby Planet Robobot for the first time, and holy heck, this was awesome. The mech suits, the copy abilities, the crazy finale sequence. This is one of the most action-packed and insane Kirby games I've ever played. I'm so glad I didn't let myself miss out on it. It was a rush from beginning to end, and if you're wondering what your first Kirby game should be, this is definitely one you should consider. Now, okay, this next one requires some context. See, until recently, I had never played a Final Fantasy game in my entire life. It was just never a part of my childhood. I grew up knowing plenty about the franchise just because of gaming culture. I knew who Cloud was, I knew who Titus was, I knew Cactar and Toneberry, but still, I had never really played a game before. 2017, I decided that was enough. I would stop avoiding this massively important series and start all the way from the bottom and work my way up. So I did. I played Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3. Though I wasn't really taking it all that seriously back then. Final Fantasy 1 was the only one of the 3 I completed, and the other 2 I dropped about halfway through. But now it was 2018, and it was time to tackle the next game in my climb up the ladder, Final Fantasy 4. I knew this one was a big deal going in. I had heard bits and pieces about it. This is one of the games that came out in North America, so it was a little more famous than the likes of 2 and 3. And I gotta tell ya, I liked Final Fantasy 1 for its simplicity, but 4 really started to show me what Final Fantasy was becoming. The story was grander, the characters were deeper, everything just felt bigger. I fell in love with many characters and was shocked when terrible things happened to them. The plot was like a giant soap opera, and I was hooked. By the time I ended up on the friggin' moon, I knew this wasn't the Final Fantasies of yesteryear. This was a gem, and it was an honor to complete it. Back to horror, have you ever heard of Fran Bow? This little point-and-click indie horror title spoke to me in ways not a lot of games did this year. This game's got a lot of layers to it. There's so much to analyze and think about, lots of subtle, weird moments that get you wondering what it all means. Not to mention the endless charm of Fran herself, who is just a delight to listen to. Her imagination runs rampant, and it's a constant challenge to separate reality from fantasy. This game is extremely disturbing in some areas. The Alice in Wonderland aesthetic certainly contributes to that. I absolutely adore the art style. I'd love to do a video on just this game sometime, but for now, all I can tell you is that I highly recommend it if you're into this sort of thing. And okay, speaking of videos, let me tell you about the last game I played in March, Knight's Journey of Dreams. Knights has always been a personal fascination of mine. Their design is so unique and memorable, the world is interesting, the tone is so innocent and Disney-esque. It always puzzled me why Sega just let this franchise drop. I was so intrigued by it. This is the reboot for the Wii, and I played this a little bit in high school, so I wanted to give it another chance. And full disclosure, this was all in an effort to make a video on the Knight series. Yeah, I was already in the midst of working on a script and starting the edit, but I ended up getting myself really frustrated playing this game. I was not having fun. I struggled to control Knights, I wasn't clear on what I was flying through, and it was difficult to keep track of my objectives. I consistently got terrible rankings, so I knew I was doing something wrong, but it was just so frustrating figuring out what that was. And the game just wasn't giving me enough in return to make up for how difficult I was finding it. This Knights project continued into April. By then, I decided to move on to the original Knights on my Sega Saturn, assuming it was just the Wii game that was like this. I even went and got the 3D controller that was made specifically for controlling Knights. And yet, I found all the same issues were back again. It was breaking my heart. I was trying really hard to love these games, and I was finding stuff that was interesting and awesome. But after a while, I just had to stop. And I had to completely drop the video idea. I wanted the video to be about bringing this underrated franchise to light, but after what I went through, I just didn't really have the spirit to continue. So I shelved it, sadly. Maybe I'll give it another chance someday. Maybe one of you can tell me what I was doing wrong, what I could try differently, what I wasn't seeing. But for the time being, that's how the experience went, sadly. But okay, jumping back to positives. Dylan's Rolling Western. How many of you have a game or movie or book that you've just got a weird relationship with because, well, that's your name? Me being an assist trophy aside, I was kinda curious about this game anyway. The Western aesthetic was awesome, Dylan's design was sick, and I wanted to see what this little eShop gem had to offer. It's sort of a real-time tower defense game. One where you not only set up towers to defend the town, but also run around and fight off the baddies yourself. It was pretty good. I played it for a decently long while. There's some stuff that I'd fix, but I imagine that that's what the sequels are for. Overall, I recommend it. After that, I got yet another itch to hunt some monsters, so I went back to my old Monster Hunter 4U file and beat up some savage Deviljos. I've put a stupid amount of time into this game, so this isn't anything new. I may have been late to the Monster Hunter craze, starting only when Nintendo picked it up, but now I can't get enough of it. This is my casual relaxation game, the kind of game I play in bed with YouTube playing in the background if I just want to take it easy and relax for a bit. I'd continue to play this game on and off for the remainder of the month. Now, Fire Emblem. I'm not well versed in this franchise. I played Awakening back when it was new in 2013, and that's it. So it felt like a good time to try out another one. Fire Emblem Fates felt like the best choice. Birthright, not Conquest. From what I've heard, that game would kill me. So how did I like it? Well, I liked it, though I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I did Awakening. There were definitely difficulty spikes here and there that got me stressed, and I wish I got to know certain units better, like my wife, but it was still enjoyable. And while I may have struggled, I wasn't put off, and I wouldn't be opposed to more Fire Emblem in my future. I'm a beginner making baby steps into this franchise, so I'm just happy I've made any progress. Ending April, another game I've played countless times, but with a twist. Silent Hill 2 is one of my favorite games ever made. I could perform a lecture on it at this point. The haunting atmosphere, the symbolism, the Jamesisms. You'll certainly gain an intimate relationship with Mr. Sunderland if you play this game.
Hey, I didn't mean anything.
Oh, sweetie. Now, since my friend showed me some fantastic games earlier, I wanted to return the favor by inviting him to Silent Hill, and I'm thrilled to report that he really loved it. This game's everything you've heard and more. Silent Hill 2 is an experience no survival horror fan should be without. Alright, into May now. Kirby, Star Allies. I was so looking forward to this one. I'm all about that Kirby. And Star Allies, it was pretty enjoyable. The whole gimmick this time is that you give your enemies a little smooch and then they become your allies. This made for some cool new puzzles and level layouts and upped the chaos factor by a wide margin. The game was a little short. That was the toughest pill to swallow. It was much shorter than I expected it to be. But hey, it's Kirby. Kirby games tend to be on the shorter side. And you know what? I had fun the entire time, so I can forgive it. Plus, there's like way more DLC now than there was back in May, so yeah, everything's cool. Next, after Silent Hill 2, my friend wanted more and asked for the more modern Silent Hill games. And I thought this was the perfect opportunity to give Downpour another shot. I think this game gets far more hate than it deserves. Does it sit on the same pedestal as Silent Hill 2 or even 3? No, of course not. But from what we played, this made for a fine Silent Hill experience. And as of right now, thanks to the whole PT debacle, it's the last Silent Hill we ever got. I'm gonna change the subject now. This is just making me sad. Okay, you're gonna get mad at me again. Just like Final Fantasy, there's another super important franchise that I haven't tackled fully, and that's The Legend of Zelda. I know, but unlike Final Fantasy, where I've never even touched a game before, here I've got a lot more experience than that. I've played quite a few games actually, Majora, Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild, but even the games I've gotten the farthest in, I always ended up putting them down after a while, and that just ain't gonna fly anymore. So it was time to pick a Zelda game and see it all the way through to the very end. So I chose Phantom Hourglass. I know, what a random choice, and it's never gonna stop being funny to me that the first Zelda game I ever completed was Phantom Hourglass. But all that aside, this game was still fun. This was the most DS-y game I've ever played. You practically control the whole game with your stylus. There's this one moment when you have to close the DS and open it again in order to progress. It's crazy. The DS era, what a wild time. Now, I'm not a big first-person shooter guy, but boy howdy do I love Borderlands 2. The colors, the humor, the characters, the world. This is the way to win me over with this genre. I've played this game twice, and each time I try and pick a new character to play. This time I was the Siren, though I still went for a sniper playstyle, because that's just how I roll. I don't know, man, I had a great time. I loved this game. Can it come out for Switch? That would be the perfect kind of third-party game to come out for Switch. Speaking of Switch, Darkest Dungeon came out for Switch, and that gave me the perfect excuse to play it again for 2 weeks. Darkest Dungeon is a roguelike RPG with a creepy, gothic, Edgar Allan Poe-like atmosphere. It's extremely challenging too. You pick your party, what items they walk in with, and that's all they get. They have to make it to the end of the dungeon alive with only what they took in with them. And if they die, they're dead for good. It's pretty intense. Highly recommended to people who like high-stakes survival strategy games. More Kirby! Nightmare in Dreamland. It's funny, this is one of the games I owned as a kid, and I played this game a lot. I remember back in middle school I had a bus ride that lasted over an hour both ways, and so I would challenge myself to beat this game just on that bus ride and try and get faster and faster with it. And that training must have paid off, because here I am over 10 years later, and I still blast through this game like a speedrunner. Despite all the time that's passed, I remember just about every level and every enemy that appeared and where they were and what power-ups were best. You guys have a game like that? Something you played all the time as a kid, so now you just got the whole thing memorized? Let me know. The last game I played in May was a Mega Man game. I'm not very knowledgeable in Mega Man either. I'm super trash tier bad at the classic NES games, and I've never played an X game before. Definitely more games I have to add onto the list. But what I have played is Mega Man Battle Network. I had this game as a kid as well, so this was the kind of Mega Man game I grew up with. I also grew up with the anime on 4Kids, so this particular side of Mega Man I'm very much fond of. I've never played the second game in the series before, which is why I chose that. I had the fifth game when I was a kid, of all things. It was extremely similar anyway, just with new plots and characters. The game kind of splits itself into episodes. I guess that's why it lent itself so well to a TV show. And while I did end up putting the game down just before the final chapter, I did get very far and had a fun time with this nostalgic trip. I had a big job start for me in June, so this month didn't have too much game playing. I didn't get to complete anything, just kind of casually picked up games here and there. I played a little bit of Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which was awesome. I'm so happy this game ended up as good as it did, bringing back that classic Castlevania feel. It makes me really hopeful for the other Bloodstained game that they're working on right now. Then I played Dragon Age Origins. This was a big kind of game that I don't usually find myself playing. I missed out on a lot of these PS3 era games just cause I didn't own the system when it was new. However, as a BioWare game, I do have some experience with their kind of RPG, so I wasn't going in as blind as I thought. This is a large-scale fantasy RPG. I picked the Noble Dwarf story, and while I didn't get super duper far, I did do quite a bit. I was starting to get into the plot, enjoy my party characters. I remember that whole story with the elves and the werewolves. I did end up turning my dwarf into a D&D character for myself, so it did have an impact on me in that way. Back to familiar territory now, I played some Pokemon Crystal. Not too much to say here, just an average Pokemon playthrough I kept up until I felt like stopping. More than anything, this was just an excuse to go back and enjoy a Pokemon game I haven't played as often as the others. Next was Super Princess Peach. This game was interesting. Adorable, firstly, and it's just really neat to see a game that can confidently be called a Princess Peach game. Now yes, haha, she fights using her emotions, but you know what? Everyone in the Mushroom Kingdom is suffering through uncontrollable emotions. That's what Bowser's entire scheme is all about this time, so it ain't just Peach. And those powers make for some fun levels and boss fights, so I think it's all done respectfully. I wish Peach broke off into her own franchise like Yoshi or Donkey Kong did. I wish I got a whole series of Peach games. Okay, how about like a visual novel RTS game like Civilization Cross Phoenix Wright, where as Peach you have to manage the Mushroom Kingdom, make alliances with other kingdoms, move your Toad troops around, and invade opposing forces, so Rastaland's days are numbered, Daisy! Where was I? Splatoon, yes, Splatoon 2. The last game I played this month was Splatoon 2. I was pretty late to the party this time, but I loved the original Splatoon, so it was only a matter of time that I got its sequel. I'm not an extremely active Splatoon player, but every so often I'll hop in and give it a go. And this time I was playing with friends, which made the experience that much better. Games like this are great when you have a job, because you don't have to commit and sit down to a big giant RPG completion. You can just have a couple matches whenever you can safely fit them in, and wrap them up in a jiffy. Oh, and Salmon Run! I was all over playing Salmon Run! And yeah, Splatoon's great. What a great little series this has become. Remember when Splatoon was first announced and no one was really sure what to make of it? And now here we are wishing we could attend one of those holographic Off the Hook concerts. Yeah, times have changed. I wanted to start off July with a game I've been wanting to replay for ages now. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Sky, the definitive version of these games, and it shows. I have so many great things to say, but one thing at a time. The look? Beautiful. These sprites are so charming to look at and display a surprising amount of emotional range. And the backgrounds? Even better, man. Some of these are just outstanding. The dungeon crawling? Fun. Since you can speed through rooms and hallways, they go by relatively quick. Unless you get a really long and challenging one, which tests how well you act under pressure. But best of all, the plot. Oh my god, this story. I thought maybe since I played it in like middle school, I may have imagined just how good this plot was in my head. And then going back to it years later, I'd realize, it's alright, it's cute, it doesn't really hold up. But no, this story wants you to cry. This story has a soul, and it isn't afraid to stop for a moment for characters to flesh out and develop. I can't believe this much work went into the story for this game, and it hands down makes this the best game in the Mystery Dungeon series. It was right around here when the Smash fever started to kick in again with my friends and I. I've been playing Smash Bros for most of my life, and I like to think I'm okay. Well, like our good friend Krillin, I may be stronger than your average human, but I don't come close to the current top dogs. Anyway, for the sake of curiosity and experimentation, the gang and I decided to pop in Melee and, see how it holds up. None of us had any idea what we were doing, and going back to Melee speed after like a decade of Brawl and Smash 4 was enough to throw us completely off our game. We pretty much made fools of ourselves and made a pact to never try this again. But while I had the GameCube plugged in, I decided to put in a playthrough of Pikmin. Oh, that was more alliteration than Pikmin is such a quick and relaxing game. You can beat it in a day, and the charming Pikmin atmosphere helps loads when life starts to feel stressful. Honestly, I wasn't putting much thought into it as I played it, but writing about it now, I really enjoyed playing Pikmin. Maybe I should put the sequels on my list of games to replay. Or, maybe Nintendo could give us Pikmin 4. Rhythm Heaven
Mega Mix.
This one felt like a match made in heaven, pun not intended. A giant collection of past Rhythm Heaven games and songs, all portable on the 3DS? Yeah, I was very much on board with this one. I've always been pretty good at rhythm games. I don't know, whenever I've had to press a button to the beat, I've usually come out on top. So on some of these songs, I tried to challenge myself further. I remember once taking a train ride, and for the entire trip, I tried playing Seesaw as perfectly as I could without looking at the screen. And I did it for like the entire ride, like a maniac. And I did it! I don't know what to do with that information now, but I did it. Then Mario Tennis Aces came out, and I mean, it was alright. I was kind of hoping for it to be a little more, but for what we got, it was a pretty solid, even slightly competitive Mario Tennis game. But you know, Mario sports games used to be a lot more than this, right? Or is that just nostalgia for and Striker's Charge talking? I feel like they could have gone all out with this one, but just decided to go fairly out. And you know, I can appreciate that. The only thing that it needed to do was be better than Ultra Smash on the Wii U, and you know what? That was an easy success. More proof that Switch times are good times. Alright, at this point I felt like enough time had passed and it was time to play the next Final Fantasy game on the list, Final Fantasy V. Unlike 4, I knew absolutely nothing of this game walking in, and maybe that helped it, because I seriously loved this game even more than I loved 4. These characters were so wholesome and pure, and they made their own little ragtag family. There was so much humor in this game too. I really wasn't expecting that. There was a decent supply of laugh out loud moments. This was a game that I just couldn't stop. I had to keep going until I reached the end, and when I did, I felt like I experienced something magical. Final Fantasy is getting so good, and I feel like with every passing game, it's only going to improve further. I wanted to start playing 6 right afterwards, but I didn't want burnout to set in, so I decided to give it a little more time. Admittedly, I did kinda need a break after that big game, so I took a week off of gaming, with the exception of a couple short rounds of Ice Climber. I don't know, I'm not an NES era gamer by any means, but something keeps bringing me back to this one. And every time I do, I feel like I get slightly farther than I did the last time. I guess I was really having a retro phase because next up I played Kirby's Dream Land, the original Kirby game. Seriously, you could beat this game in like half an hour, but you know what? It was a darn solid half hour. This is Kirby at his simplest. You don't even have copy abilities in this one, but it still feels so good to play, and the music's great. I'm glad I gave this one a shot. And then finally for July was WarioWare Smooth Moves on the Wii. Maybe after Rhythm Heaven, I felt the need to play more of these mini-game, micro-game games. I mean, you can't get more mini than WarioWare. I hail this as one of my favorite party games. It's one of my go-tos for when I got a bunch of people over who aren't necessarily big gamers. That patented Wario weirdness mixed in with the chaotic and fast-paced micro games, it's totally hectic, which in turn makes it awesome. August started with a game I've never played, despite it being one of the most hailed classics of the retro video game era. I've barely played the new Donkey Kong Country games, let alone the original, but I figured I gotta play this sometime in my life, might as well be now. I'm pretty much garbage at fast-paced precision platformers. In fact, if not for the save states on this 3DS re-release, I likely would never have gotten to K. Rool. But I did. I completed it. It was very hard, but now I can say that I've beaten Donkey Kong Country, even with a little help and a little late in my life. Next up was a game I had my eye on for quite a while. Remember all that talk about Monster Hunter earlier? Well, of course, I was fascinated by this sudden, random, colorful anime JRPG, Monster Hunter Stories. I didn't expect much from this game. I had no idea what I was in for, really, but what I got was one of the highlights of this gaming year for me. It was fun collecting all these familiar monsters and raising them to fight for me. Combat and exploring never felt stale. The plot was super anime, but I grew a fondness for it the more I played. I wish more people got to experience this one. It's a super interesting diversion for fans of Monster Hunter who want something a little different. I was pulled back into Splatoon again for the Octo expansion, and I went ham trying to complete it. This DLC was absolutely brutal. It got so overwhelming at times, just how much the levels expected me to do. But at the same time, it was exhilarating. There was so much creativity here. I was hooked by all the lore elements, and every time I had a frustrating level, it was immediately followed up by an awesome one. So overall, I'd say I had a pretty good time, though I'd understand it if other people didn't feel the same way. By this far into the year, I was very much into the idea of picking up famous franchises that I had never experienced myself and finally giving them a shot. It always feels good to check them off the list and see what they're all about. As such, I had never played Crash Bandicoot before, not a single game in the series, so when this beautiful remake trilogy graced my Switch, of course I was gonna play it. I was adamant on playing the first one, even though my friend recommended otherwise. And after playing it, I can kinda see what he meant. This game is pretty challenging, and as stated earlier, I'm not the most skilled platformer guy around. But I did end up getting pretty far, overcoming some levels I heard nightmare stories about. And even though I put it down, I'm excited to try out the sequel sometime. After that was another burst of shorter games. WarioWare Gold was a pretty excellent return to form for the big guy. It easily ranks up there with smooth moves for me now. The voice acting in particular being a highlight. Like, I'm still processing hearing Wario speak in full sentences.
Hey, Ashley. Okay, I'll call you back.
And then I played Castlevania, the very first. I guess this retro kick was still going strong. I didn't get to finish it, but I got way farther than I thought I was going to. I guess that's also a theme this month. At least in this case, I'm not totally unfamiliar, as I've played a few of these in my day. I think I just need more practice before I finally face Dracula head on. And finally, I revisited an old world that I had left behind. Undertale. Oh. Well, I guess I didn't leave this place as happy as I thought. Well, anyway, it's impossible to ignore just how big of an impact Undertale left on the gaming world, and I'm guilty of succumbing to that hype. But I do truly believe that this game is fantastic. The writing is perfect, the humor still gets me every time, the characters are timeless, and the plot twists are... I'm glad I got to try this game again and remind myself that underneath all that fandom and hype still lies a brilliantly made piece of culture. Before I knew it, it was September, and the craziest thing was that the first game I chose to play this month ended up being my favorite game of the whole year.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
A few years back, I tried playing Kid Icarus Uprising, but without the special 3DS stand attachment, I found the controls unbearable. But wanting to give the game a second chance, I found the stand and played it the way it was intended. And I'm glad I did, because this game's amazing. Pit, Palutena, Viridi, and the rest of the cast are all so charming and delightful to listen to. The writing is absolutely hysterical, and the whole game feels like a top-tier anime. In fact, with how fast the chapters can move in this game, it almost did feel like marathoning a 12-episode anime all in the same afternoon. There were so many twists, turns, jumping from area to area. We're in space now? The villains change, the plot thickens, we're fighting Palutena? It all happened so fast, and before I knew it, it was over. It made me feel a little sad, because I wish there was more, and I'm not sure we're ever really gonna see more. But for what it is, Kid Icarus Uprising was definitely my favorite game of 2018. Of course, that's not the only game I played this September. More Monster Hunter. Finally, Generations U came out on Switch, which was a relief. I'm glad I didn't have to go through importing this thing from Japan. And it even let me transfer my 3DS save file over, which was so nice. Does any other Switch game connect to the 3DS that way? I feel like there could be some potential there. Anyway, I felt like playing more Fire Emblem after enjoying Fates, but I wanted to try out one of the older ones so I could experience what that era of the series was like. I figured the GBA entry was a good choice, since technically it's the first Fire Emblem game we ever got over in the States. I was enjoying this one too. Many people say that the tutorial chapters with Lyn don't really belong, but darn it, Lyn was adorable, so I didn't even mind. What I did mind though was halfway through my playthrough, I somehow lost my save file. Yep, I turned the game on and suddenly it just wasn't there anymore. That really bummed me out, and I didn't really feel like starting over from scratch after how far I got, so I just had to move on, at least knowing I liked what I actually got to play. My next experiment was with Super Mario Galaxy, and man, I remember what it was like picking up this game at a Best Buy back in the Wii days. I haven't really played this game all the way through since childhood, so I was super interested to see how it held up. Of course, I mean, this was a 3D Mario game. Of course it was going to hold up. It's going to be super polished and a fun experience, and it was. But I found myself getting more frustrated with certain levels than I expected. It was tough to stay excited when I was forced to do tedious platforming challenges all over again just from the slight screw up. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have gone for full completion because that was really exhausting. I still enjoyed a large majority of the game. Funnily enough, I found the levels that drove me crazy as a kid a piece of cake. Meanwhile, the levels that gave me trouble were random ones that I never would have expected. I know I must have been enjoying myself because after I completed Mario Galaxy and breathed a sigh of relief, I went in for the double dip and immediately played Mario Galaxy 2. Most people I know say this game is better than the first, but I'm not as nostalgic towards this one, so I couldn't say for sure. I don't think it was very smart of me to play this so soon after 1 though, because I wasn't even able to make it to the final boss before wanting to put the game down. I did enjoy both Galaxy games, but significantly less than I thought I would have, and I feel like if I were to play them again, I might end up enjoying them even less. So for now, I think I'm happy with where I left off and can safely call these games fun, but flawed. Took a bit of a break, did some rounds of Fast Remix with some friends. I swear, if you haven't heard of this game before, it's the F-Zero sequel Nintendo won't give you. It moves so fast, and it's an adrenaline rush like you've never experienced. Beautiful graphics, too. I highly recommend it. Speaking of fast, I tried to play Sonic Colors during this time, too, going in expecting it to be a full playthrough, though I barely played it at all, honestly. I don't know what my deal with Sonic games are. I remember liking this one enough back in the day, so I wonder what's going on here. Maybe something for me to investigate in the future. After moving on from that, I went on to something completely different. Some other franchises I've never played before are what you could call the Sony mascot trilogy. You know the ones, Sly Cooper, Ratchet & Clank, and Jak and Daxter. I don't know a thing about any of these franchises and decided to change that. So I popped in Jak and Daxter and said, why not? Let's give this game a shot. Honestly, this was so much fun. The characters were charming and had super unique designs. Collecting power cells was extremely satisfying. I imagine it's the same feeling fans of collectathons like Banjo-Kazooie feel. It's that feeling of, alright, I got it! And clearing an entire map of items and seeing that number go up slowly but surely, and I beat the whole game in a day! How refreshing is that? I felt so proud of myself after playing this that I went right on ahead to check out Jak 2. This mission was horrible. These time limits are insufferable. I can't steer this thing. Gotta do this all again, huh? Oh boy! Feel like helping out there, Chief. Thank God this guy got stuck or I never would have gotten past this part. Leave me alone! You want me to do what? How am I supposed to click this fast? This is a nightmare. How did we get here from just a simple cute platformer? And I beat it. Oh yeah, I beat it. And I got this super awkward ending for my troubles. This is one of the most agonizing games I've ever had to play! I do still want to play Jak 3, but I think I'm gonna give it a little more time before I do. Despite all of that, September still managed to leave me with a smile on my face as I replayed one of my favorite games, Okami. This game is truly something special. I completed this game, stray beads and all, way back in 2010, so it was about time I brought my memories of this game up to date. And I'm so happy I did, because I had forgotten so many little details and moments from this game that are just splendid. And being able to play portably on the Switch, and for $20? It's like a steal. If you've never given this game a try, I can't even begin to tell you how much I recommend it. It's beautiful, it's really long, it's a much bigger story than you'd expect, but there was never a dull moment. This is exactly the right kind of game I needed to pick me up after Jak 2. Engaging, adventurous, relaxing, and magical. Check it out. Looking back, October was pretty small, honestly. Super Mario Party was exciting. It's about time Mario Party got its act together after 9 and 10. I kinda wish they just went ahead and called this 11, but, you know, I'm honestly just stunned the name Super Mario Party has never been used before. Starlink, Battle for Atlas. I was so hyped up for this game. I adore the Star Fox series, and I'm always thinking about the potential that's just sitting there, and where Star Fox as a franchise could be right now if its history wasn't so shaky. So sure, Fox's inclusion into this game is what got me to look at it in the first place, but what really surprised me was how good the game was looking even without Fox. This was another attempt at the Toys to Life formula, like Skylanders or Disney Infinity, but this one seemed to really have the idea down. Firstly, and most importantly, the toys weren't even necessary, and the game could be played even without the spaceships. A massive innovation right there. But then, you know, the spaceships are so cool. They're like super well made and detailed, and they light up, and they're just so much fun. And then there's the game itself, which it just felt so good to fly around in space and seamlessly enter a planet's atmosphere, zip around there, fly somewhere else. I felt like I could do it forever. Of course, after a while I did put it down, but I played it pretty consistently for like 2 months, which is really impressive. I will say, I do feel a bit of egg on my face paying full retail price for Starlink when you can pretty much get it on clearance now for like $30. Oops. Guess Toys to Life really is a doomed genre. You know, it's funny, every time I feel like I'm done with Doki Doki Literature Club, something brings me back in. It could be a really well put together mod, or a fan story, or a fan comic. I love how much can be done with these characters, and seeing the story unofficially continue where it left off. There are just endless amounts of directions to go in. Out of all the mods I've seen, these are the ones I recommend the most. Some continue the story, like I said, though others are more simple things, like just Yuri. There's an ongoing fan comic called Doki Doki Literature Girls that I've been following in its arc-based story structure. I highly recommend checking this out. Doki Doki is just the game that keeps on giving, and like Undertale, I still think this game is brilliant, hype aside, and I enjoy it on a healthy level. God of War. Now for something completely different. I was really into these games as a teenager, which makes sense. Kratos seems to be the embodiment of teenage angst and rage. But I pretty much stopped playing them as I got older. Then the newest game came out, and Kratos seemed much older, more mature. And the tone seemed to be much closer to The Last of Us than anything we've seen from Kratos so far. That was very much intriguing, but I felt like before I played that, I should go back to the original God of War and see how it held up. There's something really satisfying about playing God of War. I don't know what it is, but the epic music, the stylish moves, even every time Kratos rips open a chest, I don't know, it just feels good in a very manly sort of way. But that effect only lasted me so long, because after a decent time playing, I just had to put it down. Enemies just never stopped spawning, and constantly interrupted my pace. It was starting to become a pain, so I stopped playing it before it had a chance to get to me too much. And I'm glad I did, honestly. I got exactly what I was hoping for from what little I played, so I didn't want to spoil that feeling. Then the final game of October, emphasis on final, because it was time once again to return to Final Fantasy. This was a big one. I knew 6 was a big deal. Heck, it's probably the second biggest deal, only behind 7. I've heard this game hailed on a godly status, one of the greatest RPGs of all time. Endless praise. I was so excited to give it a start. But, and be prepared, something weird happened. And it's not the game's fault. With Final Fantasy, I don't want to pressure myself to complete the games, but with 6, it felt too important not to complete. And at first, it didn't seem like it'd be a problem at all. I was loving the world I was in, Terra, Locke, Celeste, Kefka, who I've heard so much about. Nothing was disappointing, it was all exceeding expectations. So, why was this happening? Why did it feel like such a push to keep going? I started to take long breaks between sessions, partly because of my tiring job, but also just because I didn't want to force it. So more time passed, and more time passed. Pretty soon, I was playing only about once a week. I kept putting it on my to-do list in all caps, play Final Fantasy VI, and I think I accidentally turned this game into homework for myself. This continued for the rest of 2018. Even into 2019, I only finally let myself put the game down in January. I was so afraid to stop the game because I knew of its reputation. I felt like I had to press on, even though I kinda wanted to move on to something else. What happened? I'm not sure. It wasn't the game. I was loving everything I was seeing. Was I just not in an RPG mood? That happens sometimes. Was it my walkthrough that was making me do more side questy things that took up more time? Was it just the fact that my job at the time forced me to play less than I wanted? Could have been all those things. When I finally put the game down though, I made a promise that I would pick this up again and continue from where I left off. Once I'm back in the mood, I'll go back to it. This is a great game and it deserves it. Besides, if I don't, then I'll never be able to move on to 7, and I can't allow that. November. We're nearly there now, almost at the end. Started things off with a Mega Man-a-thon. I am absolute bottom tier trash at classic Mega Man, like I think I said before, so I wanted to improve using the Legacy Collection released on Switch. With the help of a handy dandy rewind button, which I totally didn't use, I ended up beating Mega Man's 1 through 4 before putting the game down. Alright, sure, maybe I took the pansy route, but it was fun, and this whole thing timed out perfectly with the release of Mega Man 11. Now I had to beat a Mega Man game without any of those fancy cheats, and while I didn't make it through the Wily Castle, I had a blast fighting all the creative robot monsters. Masters? What? Robot Masters. And I swear, looking at this game with its clever enemy placement and level design, and putting that next to Mighty Number 9, there isn't even a contest. I missed out on Captain Toad back on the Wii U, but its Switch port was a perfect opportunity for me to check out this little gem. You ever play with one of those little plastic mazes with the metal ball inside that you rotated all over the place to get the ball into the hole? Well, it's pretty much like that. The little puzzle box levels are incredible, and I would love to see these levels miniaturized and 3D printed as desk ornaments. The weird repeating cutscenes are a little strange, but it didn't take away from the experience any. This was a sweet little brain tester. I guess I was trying a whole ton of Switch games at this point. I remember seeing this game Candle, Power of the Flame, on a GameStop shelf one day and went, "What is that? I've got to try it out." The art style was without question gorgeous, but unfortunately the gameplay didn't exactly hold me. I got myself lost one too many times to see it through. But something I did see through was Deathmark. Oh my god, this is a creepy game. A horror visual novel that apparently got its start on the Vita of all things. This was another case of seeing it at a GameStop and going, yeah, okay, I have to see what this is. What's fascinating about a horror game in a visual novel form is you almost forget the kind of game you're playing sometimes. You can be so invested with reading the dialogue describing the environment that you somehow don't see the horror parts coming when they show their ugly head. And when you actually get into combat, yes, combat with the ghosts, ooh, that is just unsettling. I have very mixed feelings about the Pokemon Let's Go games. I was actually planning on skipping them entirely until I realized I was the only one in my friend group not getting them. Now don't get me wrong, I actually had a great time playing this game. The charm was undeniable, seeing Kanto in such a beautiful new light, recreated tile by tile in HD. I actually kind of love keeping the grid structure. It allows for muscle memory to kick in from all the times we went through this region before. I mean, aside from the wild Pokemon, because they shifted them around so many times I kept going like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be there. You can't find Odysseus there. If you have any amount of nostalgia for the original games, you will have a great time. But I do still have some problems with it. For one thing, play this game handheld. The motion control tossing of the Pokeballs is just impossible. Like, it's impossible. Especially with the little Pokeball Plus, which you'd think would make things better, not worse. I'm a semi-avid player of Pokemon Go, so I'm not exactly bothered that they went for this kind of game, but part of me still just wishes we got a regular remake of Kanto instead of a side game. And the post-game with the Master Trainers? No. Just no. Do you honestly expect me to train up 150 unique Pokemon to like level 80 to beat all these trainers? I don't think so. I got better things to do. You can keep your title of Master Metapod Trainer. I'm moving on. So yeah, there are parts that I have problems with, and I don't know if I'll be going back to this game anytime soon, but that first nostalgia-filled playthrough, yeah, that was worth the price of admission.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for. Da, 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 da.
I finally bought a PS4, and the first game I played right out of the gate was Hitman. I was dying to play this game after seeing the shenanigans people got into on YouTube. I am enamored by how much freedom you have in this game to either be as efficient or as stupid as you darn well please for each mission. You're just thrust into a living, breathing area chock full of people, told who you gotta kill and with what, and go. Get them. Don't get caught. Everything else is up to you. I have never had this much childish delight just roaming around, deliberately being an idiot, killing these people in the most stupid ways possible. I love it. It's great. Not a bad intro to the PS4's library at all. It was also the only PS4 game I played this year at all, so... And finally, we reached December. And in December, there was only one thing on the brain, and that was Smash Bros. Ultimate. It was right around the corner, and I needed something to pass the time while I was waiting for it. Binding of Isaac did the trick. It's been a while since I picked up this game. I've put so many hours into it in the past, and I feel like I'm this close to completing each and every task and achievement it has to offer. But every time I look away, the game adds even more. It's amazing. This is truly one of my favorite games of all time, and... Oh, Smash is out, guys! There was a time when I said, man, how on earth do we get better than Smash 4? Funny to think about that now, how far we've come since the reveal of Mega Man. He feels so small now next to Ridley, K. Rool, Joker, Banjo. It's just nuts. Smash Bros. Has transcended beyond just Nintendo. It's become a celebration of video games as a medium. It's a hall of fame for characters who have left their mark, and that's just incredible. I play Smash here and there and like to think I'm okay. These are my mains if you're curious. And every time, it's like I'm picking up an old habit. It all comes back to me no matter how long it's been since my last match. I can always pick it up and play it. And this game by far feels like the best one yet. World of Light was a little disappointing, dragged on a little bit for my taste, but darn it, it doesn't even matter. This game was still magnificent, and we're not even done. We have 2 DLC fighters left to reveal. I'm suspecting Crash and Geno, but at this point, who even knows, man? Us mortals can't predict these things. It could be anybody. Deltarune, Toby Fox's sequel? Follow-up? Next game after Undertale. Right now, all that exists is Chapter 1, but it is a long, self-contained chapter that could basically function as a short game in of itself. Everything you loved about Undertale is here. The humor, the wholesome characters, the phenomenal music, and interesting world. This tells a smaller story than Undertale did, but hints at a larger one that I assume has yet to be revealed. The chemistry between our 4 heroes is some of the best character chemistry I've seen in a very long time. I'll definitely be looking forward to whatever comes next. Around this time, I got on a Star Wars kick, and so I wanted to play a few of my favorite games ever released under the name. Empire at War is so close to a perfect Star Wars RTS game. It's got so much going for it, but I just wish it was a little more. I'd love to see a sequel that maybe added the Clone Wars era, better graphics, smarter AI opponents. The modding community has already done a lot of that, but I would love to see this type of Star Wars strategy game given a second chance.
You are strong, child, but I will break you. The
But the big one for me was Knights of the Old Republic. This is easily one of my favorite RPGs of all time, and I've beaten it on several occasions. So I decided to do something a little different. I'm usually such a goody two-shoes of these kinds of games, way too much of a chicken to pick any of the dialogue choices other than the nicest. So this time, we're going on the dark side route, and it was so cool seeing all these different outcomes and dialogues to a game I've played over and over again. This game stands as a timeless classic for Star Wars games and RPGs. The planets you visit, the characters you meet, particularly your party members, this is the closest I've ever felt to being in the galaxy far, far away. This would end up being the last game I completed in the year of 2018. But not the last game I played. No, I decided to end things right. I started this journey with Earthbound, so I decided to end this monstrous quest with Mother 3. I didn't get to play too much of it before the year wrapped up, but it felt like the only way to end this video, with a game that's powerful, emotional, and yet simple. All the townsfolk living in Tazmily Village remind you to take pleasure in the simple things. They don't live a very complicated or stressful lifestyle, but they love it. It's peaceful. And watching the town slowly corrupt and convert under the influence of the pig masks, there's so much going on behind the scenes here. Lucas has gone through so much, and seeing him overcome everything that's thrown at him, it's empowering. I feel like there are lots of lessons to be learned here, and I don't even think I've discovered them all, but it's safe to say that this game, well, it's special. Will we ever see this game released properly to the West? I don't know. I'd like to think so. If Mother 1 can do it, then so can this, right? We just gotta remain hopeful. I believe it will happen, eventually. But even if it never does, I strongly recommend you give this game a shot. The wonderful fan community has helped create lots of ways to play it in English, and you are sure to discover something new within its story. And that's it. We're done. A full year of video games and over half a year of editing. Gosh, man, You know, this may have taken a really long time to make, and thank you all once again for being so patient, but watching it over right before I upload, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I made the agreement with myself to play more video games, and I did. I got to experience so many new things and re-experience old things that I'd forgotten, and I got to share it with all of you. So I'm completely comfortable calling this video a success. Though I think next time we're gonna do something a little shorter. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed. If you stayed for this entire video, I could not thank you possibly enough. I really don't know how well this video is gonna do, but I really enjoyed making it, and I really hope you all enjoyed watching it. I doubt I'm gonna do this kind of thing for next year, but who knows? Maybe I'll come up with something new. Thank you all again, and I'll see you all next video.